The topic is problems involving percents. The essential question is, how can you solve problems involving percents? So, knowing these relationships can help you. They are all the same formula, just rewritten each time to help you isolate what you're looking for. So when you're given a story problem where it's asking you to find a part or a percentage or a whole, I've listed 3 equations to help you do that. And the thing that I really want to reiterate is that they're all equal to each other. But the way I wrote them will help you solve for what you're looking for faster. So here's what I mean by that. So if you're looking for the decimal version of a percent, like if a question's asking you to find the percentage of something, this would be the fastest equation to use. You would take your part divided by whole. When you do that, it would give you the decimal version of the percent. And you should know from previous teachings how to convert a decimal to a percentage. The second equation that I've listed shows that it isolates the part. Okay, so if you're looking for something where you're solving for the part, this would be the fastest equation to use because you would be given the decimal version of the percent or the percentage, which you could convert to the decimal version. You'd multiply it by the whole, and when you do that, you would get the part. The third equation is where the story problem would be asking you for a whole. So within the given context of the problem, it would probably give you the part, and it would give you the percentage, which you could convert to the decimal version of the percent. You'd go part divided by the decimal version of the percent, and that would give you the whole. So these 3 equations are all equal to each other. They were just rewritten in a way to isolate what you could be looking for to help you find that answer faster, okay? So my recommendation is at least memorize 1, because you can use just one of those to solve for any thing you're looking for, whether it be a part, a whole, or a percentage. I do want you to write this down because you see there's no room for a summary right here, so we're going to write your summary right here, okay? You can use any one of these formulas to find what you're looking for. They are all the same formula, just written in ways to help you find what you're solving for faster. This next page shows you a couple of examples, and on the left-hand column I rewrote all of those equations from the front page just to kind of help guide you in case you haven't really memorized one yet, okay? So for starters, when you're confronted with one of these types of problems, you need to identify what the problem's asking you to find, okay? So for the first one, it says if you scored 18 out of 20 on a quiz, what was your percentage correct? Now this gives me a hint right there in that wording right there that they're wanting us to find the percentage. So I'm going to write it off to the side right here that we're solving for a percent. So when you go to study this, you'll know for sure which problems to practice, because if you know that you're struggling with finding percentages, then you'll know that you can rely on this type of problem to help you study, okay? So since I'm solving for a percent, you got to determine, well, which equation is probably the fastest one to use. This one right here solves for the decimal version of a percent. See how that percentage is already isolated? So I can go ahead and do this one right here. So part divided by whole will give me the decimal version of a percent. So the part is 18. That whole is 20 because that's how many points were possible on the quiz. And you just go 18 divided by 20, and that would give you 9/10. Well, remember, that's the decimal version of the percent, so you need to convert this decimal into the percentage by multiplying 0.9, 9/10, times 100. And that would give you 90%, okay? Now, something else I want to show you is how these other 2 equations would also have worked. And I'm going to show you how to do that right now, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and use the part equation right here. The decimal version of a percent is what I would write first, and I don't know that, so I'm going to call it x. Okay, we don't know the decimal version of the percent. We're going to multiply that by the whole, and we know that the whole is 20. And then that would give us the part, and remember the part right there is 18. Okay, so with this problem right here, we're going to just solve for x. We started with x, then we just multiplied it by 20. So the inverse operation of multiplying by 20 is to divide by 20. So you're going to divide both sides of that equal sign by 20. 20 divided by 20 is 1. 1 times x is x. And then 18 divided by 20 will give you 9/10, which converts to 90%. Okay? And then the third equation would also work, where you would take the part divided by the decimal version of the percent, and that would give you the whole. And the parts that you don't know, you would just call that a variable and solve for it. So I'm going to start with the part. The part was 18. I hope I have enough room here. And then we would divide by the decimal version of the percent. And we don't know that, so I'm going to call it x. And then that would give us the whole. Okay? And the whole was 20. Okay. And you'll see right here it says 18 divided by x is equal to 20. And now these problems, you have not solved for a variable when it's in the denominator. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do that, okay? So we didn't start with x because we started with 18. So up here is where I'm going to write 18. Start with 18, and then after that, we divided by x, okay? So the inverse operation of dividing by x is multiplying by x. And we're going to do that to both sides of that equal sign. Okay? X times 18 is 18x. 1 times x is 1x, or x. And that's going to equal 20 times x, which is 20x. Okay? So now what you see here, we got x divided by x, which is 1. 18 times 1 is 18. And that's going to give you 20 times x. Okay? You'll see that x is not isolated yet. And this is where it kind of looks familiar to a problem that you're probably familiar with solving. We start with x, then we multiplied it by 20. So the inverse operation of multiplying by 20 is to divide by 20. So we're going to divide both sides of that equal sign by 20. 20 divided by 20 is 1. 1 times x is 1x, or x. 18 divided by 20 gives you 9/10, which in turn converts to 90%. Okay? So you'll see for all three of those equations that I used, we came up with the exact same answer, because that's the correct answer. And the one that was the fastest one was probably this first one, because it gave us the decimal version of the percent, which we easily converted to the percentage. All right? See how that one right there, this part that you're looking for, that decimal version of the percent, that's already isolated? That's why it was the fastest. Okay? So to hopefully make this a little bit more straightforward for you in what work I've done, I'm going to go ahead and just color code this. So the stuff in blue, I used this equation. The stuff in red, I used this equation where the part was isolated. So you could solve for the part the fastest. And then for the green, I'm going to use it to represent this equation right here that we used. Okay? And I know this does take a little bit longer, but I'm just going to do this for the first page to show you how each three of these equations will work. All right? Okay, number 2. If you earned an 80% on a 20-point test, how many points did you get correct? So you got to think to yourself, are you solving for a percent, a part, or a whole? Well, right here they're giving me the percentage, so I'm not solving for a percent. Okay, it's already given. Now this 20-point test, you got an 80% on a 20-point test. It's a 20-point test, so therefore it's worth 20 points. And it's asking how many points did you get correct. So that should tell you, this part here, how many points did you get correct? That implies that you're going to be solving for a part. So I'm going to label number 2 as a part. Okay? And the fastest equation to use would be this one right here, because you'll see that part is already isolated to solve for it. So I'm going to hopefully give myself a little bit more room right here. But I'm going to start with the decimal version of the percent. So 80%, you should know that that converts into 8/10, or you could say 80/100 as a decimal, okay? So I'm going to write that right there. And then we got to multiply it by the whole. So the whole test was 20 points, okay? And when you go 8/10 times 20, you get 16. You would get 16 points correct. All right. Now I'm going to go ahead and show you how to use this equation right here, where the whole is isolated. And again, the part that you don't know, we don't know the part because right here, because of that sentence, we're going to keep it as a variable. So right here is part. We don't know the part. So that's going to be x. And then we would have to divide it by the decimal version of the percent. And the decimal version of this percent is 8/10. And that would give us the whole. And the whole test was worth 20 points. Okay? So this is one of those standard problems that hopefully you know how to solve by now. You start with x, then we divided it by 8/10. So the inverse operation of divide is to multiply. So we're going to multiply it by 8/10 on both sides of that equal sign. So that's multiply by 8/10. That says 8/10, okay? Multiply by 8/10, and this says multiply by 8/10. And 8/10 divided by 8/10 is 1. Remember, if we went this over 1, it'd be 0.8 times x. 1 times 0.8 is 0.8. So you'd have this right here. 0.8 times x is 0.8x. And this is over 1, so 1 times 0.8 is 0.8. Okay, and that would equal 20 times 0.8, which I know I'm saying it incorrectly. So 20 times 8/10 is 16. Okay, and 8/10 divided by 8/10 is 1. 1 times x is x, so x is equal to 16, which is exactly what we got over here. Okay, then I'm going to show you how the third equation also works. I mean, there's the third of the three works also. So part divided by whole equals the decimal version of the percent. We don't know the part. We do know the whole. The whole thing is worth 20 points. And that's going to give you the decimal version of the percent, and the decimal version of 80% is 8/10. Okay, let's go ahead and solve this. We had started with x, then we divided it by 20. So the inverse operation of dividing by 20 is to multiply by 20. So we're going to multiply by 20 on both sides of that equal sign. Okay, make that in a fractional form. So 20 times x is 20x. 1 times 20 is 20. 8/10 times 20 is 16. 20 divided by 20 is 1. 1 times x is x. So x is equal to 16. See how we got the exact same answer using each of those three equations. And it does take longer, but I'm doing that just for this page to show you how it doesn't matter which one you use as long as you solve it correctly. Okay, number 3. If you got 12 correct and you earned a 75%, how many points were possible on the exam? So what do you think you're solving for? A part, percent, or a whole? Well, it says how many points were possible on the exam. That kind of implies you are solving for a whole. Okay? So think about which equation will be the fastest one to use out of these three right here to help you solve for the whole. And it would be this one because you'll see that whole is isolated. So let's go ahead and start with the part. Well, you got 12 correct. And then you're going to divide that by the decimal version of the percent. So that would be 75/100. And that's going to give you the whole. Well, when you go 12 divided by 75/100, you would get 16. Okay? So that's the answer right there. Now let's go ahead and use let's use this one to show you that one will work. Part divided by whole equals, it will give you the decimal version of the percent. So the part was 12. The whole, we don't know because it says how many were possible. But we do know the decimal version of the percent would be 75/100. Okay, so you'll see that the x is in the denominator and you're not used to those type of problems to solve. But this is all you do. You started with 12. And then you had divided it by x. So the inverse operation of dividing by x is to multiply by x. And you do that to both sides of that equal sign. So I'm going to put that in its fractional form. So x times 12 is 12x. 1 times x is x. Oops, I forgot there's 12x. Okay, and then 75/100 times x is 75/100 x. Okay, x divided by x is 1. 1 times 12 is 12. I'm going to write it over here. And then 75/100 times x is 75/100 x. Okay, we're not done because x is not by itself yet. So now it's in the form that you're totally used to, I hope. where you would just start with x. Then we multiplied it by 75 hundredths. So the inverse operation of multiplying by 75 hundredths is to divide by 75 hundredths. And you'll do that to both sides of that equal sign. 75 hundredths divided by 75 hundredths is 1. 1 times x is 1x, or x, same thing. 12 divided by 75 hundredths is 16. So see how you got the exact same answer? It just took a little bit longer because the problem that we used did not have the whole already isolated. You had to solve for it. All right, the third equation that we haven't tried yet, or this one right here, the decimal version of the percent times the whole will give you the part. So the decimal version of the percent is 0.75, 75 hundredths, times the whole. We don't know the whole, right, because we're solving for that, so I'm going to keep it as a variable. And that will give you the part. So the part was 12, so I'm going to put the 12 right there. All right, so this is in a good form that you're used to solving for. Start with x, then we multiplied it by 75 hundredths. That says 75 hundredths. And the inverse operation of multiply is to divide, so you're going to divide both sides of that equal sign by 75 hundredths. 75 hundredths divided by 75 hundredths is 1. 1 times x is 1x, or x. 12 divided by 75 hundredths is 16. Okay, same exact answer for using all three of those equations. So like I said, you can just memorize the one that is most straightforward to you, and that will help you solve it. So you'll see here, well, for me anyway, personally, this one makes the most sense to me because of this, because of examples like this. If you scored 18 out of 20 on a test, you go 18 divided by 20, and that will give you the decimal version of a percent, then convert that decimal to a percent, and you got it. This is the most straightforward to me, so this is the one I always use. This is the one that I memorized. But like I said, these other two ones are also the exact same thing. Okay, so number 4. 10 is what percent of 80? 10 is what percent of 80? So this part right here where it says is what percent, we are solving for a percent. Okay? So the equation that I would use, because it's got percent already isolated, is right here, where it will give me the decimal version of the percent. So I must take the part divided by the whole. So the part is 10. I'm going to divide that by the whole, which was 80. And when I go 10 divided by 80, I get this decimal, 125 thousandths. And I need to convert that into a percentage. So I'm going to take 0.125, multiply that by 100, or move the decimal place 2 to the right, because that's the same thing as multiplying by 100. And I would get 12 and 5/10%. So if this was like a quiz, if you got 10 out of 80 correct on a quiz or a test or whatever, that would be your percentage, and that's not a very good percentage. You'd probably hope that you studied more. Okay, I'll show you that the next two will also work, all right? So this one right here, I'm going to write it in red. The decimal version of the percent, we don't know that, so I'm going to keep it as a variable. And then we got to multiply it by the whole. Well, the whole is 80. I could smush them together because that means the same thing, okay? And that's going to give us the part, and the part is 10. So let's go ahead and solve for x. We started with x, then we multiplied it by 80. Inverse operation of multiplying by 80 is to divide by 80, and you'll do that to both sides of that equal sign. 80 divided by 80 is 1. Oh, that's like a slanty 1. 1 times x is x, or 1x. And then 10 divided by 80 will give you 125 thousandths, which converts to 12 and 5/10%. Okay? Now that third one, using the third equation right here, start with the part. Well, that's 10. Divided by the decimal version of the percent. We don't know that, so I'm going to make it x. And that's going to give me the whole, which is 80. Okay, look, you got x in the denominator. This is one of those weirdo ones, okay? So we started with 10. Then they multiplied it, they divided it by x. Inverse operation of dividing by x is to multiply by x, and you got to do that to both sides of that equal sign. Okay, I'm going to convert this into its fractional form right there. So I have x times 10, which is 10x. 1 times x, which is 1x, or x. And then 80 times x is 80x, okay? Oh, I have x divided by x, which is 1. 10 times 1 is 10, equals 80x. Okay, now it looks normal, okay? We start with x, and then we multiplied it by 80. So the inverse operation of multiplying by 80 is to divide by 80. You do that to both sides of that equal sign. Okay, so 80 divided by 80 is 1. 1 times x is 1x, or x. And then 10 divided by 80 gives you 125 thousandths. And that converts to 12 5/10%. Okay? So for your summary, which problem on this page was the most challenging for you? So I want you to write down which one was it, 1, 2, 3, or 4. And I want you to review how to do that problem right now. So don't just write a number and then flip the page, but I want you to, like, if you're like, oh, I did not really understand number 3. I want you to go back to whatever problem you don't understand, reread it, make sure you understand how to solve it. That's very important for you to understand this material, okay? You have to practice it to get better. Okay, turn the page. Number 5 says your meal costs $20. You want to leave a 15% tip. How much was the tip? So your whole was $20. You want to leave this percentage of a tip, so you're going to be solving for a part. Saying how much was the tip? What's a part? And so the equation that I would use to get the part the fastest would be this one right here, because part is already isolated. So I'm going to take the decimal version of the percent, which is 15/100ths. And I'm going to multiply that by the whole. The whole thing was $20. And when I go 15/100ths times 20, I'm going to get 3. Okay? That tip was $3. So I guess I could put a dollar sign right there, okay? Number 6. 18 is 40% of what number? Okay? So 18 isn't the whole thing because it's only 40% of some number, which will be the whole. So right here, we're solving for the whole. Okay, so the fastest equation that would give me the whole would be this third one. Part divided by the decimal version of the percent will give me the whole. So the part is 18. Divided by the decimal version of 40% is 4/10. And when I go 18 divided by 4/10, I will get 45. Okay, 18 is 40% of 45. Number 7 says, what percent of 56 is 14? We're looking for the percent. So this would be the fastest equation to use, although I hope you know that you can use any one of those. So if you were like, I memorized this one, then use that one, okay? Okay, so I need to have the part, which was 14. The whole is 56. 14 divided by 56 will give me 25/100ths, which is 25%. Number 8. At a school, 476 students ride their bike to school. If this number is 85% of the school enrollment, then how many students are enrolled? So think about what you're solving for. This 476 right here, it's only 85% of the whole in school enrollment. So we're going to be looking for the whole. How many students are enrolled? Okay, so this equation would be the fastest. Take that part, which is 476, divided by the decimal version of the percent. So that would be 85/100ths. 476 divided by 85/100ths is 560. That's how many students are enrolled. Okay, number 9. Benji has $300 and he spends $15. What percent of his money is spent? So that one's percent. It's really important that you read things carefully so it helps you, okay? So this would be the fastest one. Part divided by whole gives me the decimal version of the percent. The part is 15 because it's asking what percent of his money is spent. So that is how much he had spent. And the whole is 300. And then 15 divided by 300 is 5/100ths. convert that into a decimal, and you'll get 5%. Okay, I want you to rewrite one of the 3 equations shown in the left column in this space right here. Make sure you understand it. So this is where I want you to kind of pick which one that you are the most comfortable with in using to solve stuff, and that's the one I want you to right now write down, because I want you to get in the process of memorizing it. So for number 10, and on these problems right here, I want you to go ahead and cover up that column right there that has all of the equations on it, because I want you to see if you have them memorized yet, if you're able to do these problems without that written out, because when an assessment comes, I'm not going to have those written out for you, okay? So you want to get practice with not having them there right in front of your face. So number 10 says 14 out of 56 students got an A. What percent of the students got an A? Are you solving for a part, percent, or a whole? You are solving for a percent. Okay, so use the equation that you like to use to help you solve for that, and solve for it. And this is the answer you should get. I'm going to use this equation. So the part divided by the whole will give me the decimal version of the percent. 14 divided by 56 is 25 hundredths, which is 25%. With whatever equation you decided to use, that should be your answer. So for number 11, it says, what is 20% of 90? So you should know that you are solving for a part, because we're looking for just 20% of this whole 90, okay? So I'm going to write part right there and use any one of the equations that you want that you have memorized. And I'm going to go the decimal version of the percent times the whole, which is 90. And when I go 20 hundredths times 90, I would get 18. Then number 12. I am solving for, I don't know, there are 18 girls in a class. If this is 40% of the class, then how many students are in the class? So you should know that you're solving for a whole. It's asking how many students are in the class, and the girls are only 40% of it. So looking for a whole. Okay, so use the equation that you like the best. I'm just going to pick one in my head. And that's what I'm going to use, but we should have the exact same answer. So I'm going to go part, 18 girls in the class, divided by the decimal version of the percent. That's going to give me the whole. So 18 divided by 4/10 is going to give me 45. There's 45 students in the class. Okay, number 13. In a school, 25% of 312 students bring lunch from home. How many students is that? So this one is a part. We're looking for the part, because that's 25% of the total students bring a lunch from home. How many students is that? So for the part, I'm going to go decimal version of the percent times the whole. 312, and that's going to give me 2500 times 312 is 78. 78 students is 25% of the 312 students total. Okay, for your summary, I want you to answer this. What is 150% of 30? Use any one of those equations you want, the one that you have memorized, and solve it. For these next examples, I'm going to go ahead and keep these equations visible, because I'm going to use all 3 of them, okay? Not all at once, but I'm just going to pick one and just use it to solve whatever one we're on, okay? So number 14 says, Erica bought a pair of shoes that cost $39.99 before tax. If tax is 8.1%, how much was the tax in dollars? So this is specifically just asking for the tax. It's not asking for us the total after tax, okay? So we're not making any adjustments to this. It's just simply asking for the tax. So that tax right there, that when we're solving for that tax, that would be just the part. And I know that the fastest equation to use to solve for the part would be this one right here, but I'm just going to go and use this one, okay? So I'm going to take the part divided by the whole to give me the decimal version of the percent. So we don't know the part, because that's what we're solving for. I'm going to designate that as X, because we don't know the part. Then we got to divide it by the whole, which was $39.99. And that's going to give me the decimal version of the percent. So 8.1% decimal would be this 81 thousandths, okay? So when we go ahead and solve this, we started with x. Then we divided it by $39.99. And the inverse operation of dividing is multiplying. So we're going to multiply by $39.99, okay? So I'm going to do that to both sides of that equal sign. That's multiply. And right here where I'm multiplying, that says 39. I'm going to make that into its fractional form, okay? So $39.99 times x is $39.99x. 1 times $39.99 is $39.99. And that's going to give me, this times this gives me 3 24/100ths. And $39.99 divided by $39.99 is 1. 1 times x is 1x, or x. So rewriting it over here, x is equal to, this is already done, $3.24. That's how much the tax was. Now if I wanted the total after tax, you would just take this plus that, okay? And that would be your total that you would spend on those shoes when you get to the checkout stand. Number 15, what is 135% of 78? So we're going to be solving for a part, okay? Am I ready to use this equation? I'll go ahead and use this one. The decimal version of the percent, so this would be 1.35, 1 35/100ths, times the whole was $78. So that would give me the part, so 1 35/100ths times 78 will give me 105 30/100ths. I think it's money. Okay. Number 16, if a shirt costs $22 and there's a sale saying it's 30% off, how much do you save from the original price of the $22 shirt? So it's not asking for how much it costs after 30% off, it's just saying, hey, how much off is it? How much money are you saving? How much off is it? So that's a part. And I'm going to go ahead and just use this equation right here. Part divided by the decimal version of percent equals a whole. So I don't know the part. So I'm going to call that x. Okay. And we're going to divide it by the decimal version of the percent. This is 0.3, 3/10. And that's going to give me the whole. Whole was $22. Okay. So when I solve this, I start with x. Then we divided it by 3/10. So the opposite inverse operation of divide is to multiply. Multiply by 3/10. You're going to do that to both sides of that equal sign. Okay, so I'm going to make that into it look like a fraction, so it's easier because this is a fraction. So 3/10 times x is 3/10 x. 1 times 3/10 is 3/10. 22 times 3/10 is 6 6/10, or you can make it 60/100ths because that's equal. 3/10 divided by 3/10 is 1. 1 times x is 1x, or x, same thing. And that's already done, so $6.60. That's how much 30% off would be. So if you went to the checkout stand and they rang you up, assuming there was no tax, this is how much you would save. So your total without the tax would be $22 minus $6.60, and that's how much that shirt would cost. But I'm not asking you about that. I'm not asking you to make any adjustments in this problem. It's just saying, how much off was it? How much is 30% off of that? That was 30% of this, okay? Number 17. Andrew sells cars. He makes a 4% commission on his sales. How much would he get if he sold $50,000 worth of cars? So I'm going to talk about this word commission. When people work in sales, they earn some money for selling you something. So a lot of times in car dealerships, those people that sell you the car, if they sell it to you, they get a percentage of the sale. So that means when you buy it, they get a little bit of that money because they were the ones that, I guess, sort of convinced you to purchase that vehicle, okay? So Andrew makes 4% commission on his sales. Well, he sold $50,000 worth of cars, so how much is he getting what's the monetary amount that he's getting out of this $50,000? Well, he's getting 4% of it. How much is 4% of that? Okay, we're solving for a part. And I'm just going to go ahead, let's go ahead and back use this one. Part divided by whole equals a decimal version of the percent. Do I know the part? Nope. Divided by the whole, this is what it was. And it's going to give me the decimal version of the percent. Well, make 4% as a decimal, 0.04, 4/100. Okay, let's go ahead and solve for x. You start with x, then we divided it by 50,000. Inverse operation of dividing is to multiply, so that's what you'll do to both sides of that equal sign. Okay, make that look like that, because 50,000 over 1 is still 50,000. Okay, 50,000 divided by 1 is still 50,000. I'm not changing the value of this. I'm just making it look easier for me. 50,000 times x is 50,000x. That's what it is when you multiply. That 1 times 50,000 is 50,000. And that's going to equal 4/100 times 50,000 is 2,000. Okay, 50,000 divided by 50,000 is 1. 1 times x is 1x, or x. So x would be, he'd make $2,000. Okay, on 4% commission. So you notice all these were solving for the part. I did that on purpose because I wanted to show you that you can use any one of these equations in order to figure out your answer. Okay, for this whole page, I'm just going to focus just using one equation, and the one that was most straightforward to me to use was this one, just simply because of how it relates to like test scores. Like if you got 10 out of 50 on a test, you could figure out your percentage by going 10 divided by 50. This was the easiest one for me to memorize, so I'm going to use that to solve every single one of these, okay? All right, but you can use, I want to reiterate, you can use whichever one you want, but we should come up with the exact same answer, okay? So number 18 says, in the United States, 13 out of every 20 cans are recycled. What percent of cans are recycled? So it's looking for the percent. So I'm going to use my favorite one, which is this one. Yours is probably different, but it doesn't matter. Part divided by whole. So the part is 13, the whole is 20. We need to know the percent. So part 13 divided by the whole was 20. 13 divided by 20 gives me 65/100, which is 65%. Okay, number 19. Again, I'm going to use this one. Use any one you want, but we should have the exact same answer. Vanessa baked just enough cookies to fill all the orders at her bakery. While the cookies were cooling, someone knocked over a cooling rack and spilled 12% of the cookies onto the floor. Vanessa had to bake 36 more cookies to replace them. How many cookies were ordered in total? So we're looking for that total, which implies the whole. Okay, so the part was, well, 36, because that's how many she had to replace. And the whole, we don't know. That's what we're solving for. And we know that the decimal version of this percent would be 12/100. Okay, so let's go ahead and solve this. Oh darn, in this format, this is where one of those weird ones where you're dividing by x. You started with 36, and then you divided by x. So the inverse operation of dividing by x is to multiply by x. So you multiply by x on both sides of that equal sign. So x times 36 is 36x. 1 times x is x. 12/100 times x is 12/100 x. Okay? I see that I have x divided by x, which is 1. 1 times 36 is 36, which would equal 12/100 times x. Okay, now it's in a format you're used to. So we start with x, then we just multiplied it by 12/100. So the inverse operation of multiply is to divide. So we'll divide both sides by 12/100. 12/100 divided by 12/100 is 1. 1 times x is 1x, or x. 36 divided by 12/100 is 300. That's how many cookies were ordered in the grand total. 300. Okay. Number 20. Jackson is a quarterback. This year he completed 350 passes, which is 75% or 70% of all the passes he has attempted this year. How many passes has he attempted? So this right here, that's not the whole thing. That's only 70% of the whole thing. So we're solving for a whole. And again, you can use any one of the equations, but I'm going to use my favorite one that I just have memorized. I don't even need to look at it because I have it memorized. So it's part divided by whole. Well, the part was 350. The whole thing we don't know, but that's going to be the decimal version of the percent. So that would be 7/10 or 70/100, same thing. Okay, this is another weird one. So I started with 350, and then we divided it by x. Inverse operation of dividing by x is to multiply by x, so that's what I'm going to do to both sides of that equal sign. Okay, x times 350 is 350x. 1 times x is x. 7/10 times x is 7/10 x. Okay, I see x divided by x, which is 1, a slanty looking one. 1 times 350 is 350. 7/10 times x is 7/10 x. So now it looks like something you're used to solving. So we start with x, multiplied it by 7/10. Inverse operation to multiply is to divide. So we're going to divide both sides by 7/10. 7/10 divided by 7/10 is 1. 1 times x is 1x, or x. And you got 350 divided by 7/10, which is 500. That's how many passes Jackson attempted. 500. For the summary, which of the three equations do you like to use? How come? Okay, so which of these three do you have memorized, and which one is your favorite one to use, and why is that one your favorite? For me, it's this one, just because it, like I said earlier, how it just makes sense to my head, in my head, based on like when we're calculating your percentage on a quiz or a test. Okay, turn the page. Okay, for this last page, I'm going to read you the question, and I'm just going to give you the answer, okay? You're expected to show your work and show how you got that correct answer. Since I'm giving you the correct answer, your work has to match that answer. Otherwise, you're not going to be receiving points for this, because that's showing me that you're not really trying on these notes, and the whole point of these notes is to help you understand the material so that you understand it. Okay, number 21 says there are 25 students in Miss Jewell's second grade class. In the class election, 4 students voted for Sam, 12 voted for Gabby, and 9 voted for Jordan. What percentage voted for Jordan? So in this problem, they're kind of giving you a little bit of extra information, but you're really just focusing on the percentage voted for Jordan. Your answer should be 36%. Okay? Number 22. Ivan, Ian, and Maddie agree to share a pizza, which was cut into 10 slices. Ivan ate 40% of the pizza. How many slices did he eat? You are solving for a part, okay, because the whole pizza was 10 slices, and Ivan ate 40% of the 10 slices, so you're going to find out what 40% of 10 is, and you should get 4 slices. Okay, number 23. Seth and Marquise ran a lemonade stand on Saturday. They agreed that Marquise would get 60% of the profit because the lemonade stand was his idea. They made a profit of $25. How much did Marquise make? So in this one, you are also solving for a part, and what you need to do is find the part to where you would get the answer of $15. Okay, show your work. And for the summary, I added problem number 24. If you earned an 80% by getting 48 points correct on a test, how many points were possible on the test? This one, you're solving for a whole, and you should get as your answer 60. 60 points were possible on the test.